Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast on a Monday night after what an epic game on Sunday. An epic finish. I mean, it's going to live for the ages. It feels like almost Bournemouth levels of just awesomeness, and it's against Man United. I mean, it doesn't really get much better than that. To bask in its glory, I've got Mize and Aaron in here with me. Hello, boys.
Hello, mate.
Good evening.
My voice is just back. Like, my voice was an absolute state, honestly. Like, even today at work, it was just croaky as hell. Like, it's just made it. Oh my god, I don't think I've shouted that loudly for that long a period of time for ages. Because arguably, it's even more than the Bournemouth game, right? Because this was kind of like celebrating the Declan Rice's goal and shouting and cheering about that for a good couple of minutes, and then just going mental again, like, you know, a couple of minutes later. Oh God, I mean, where does that rank on, you know, your moments at the Emirates? Where does that rank?
It's up there. Yeah, it was just so good, man, wasn't it? It was bloody hell. Like, it's why we go to football, isn't it? It's just why we go to games. It's why everyone loves football. And if you don't like football, I feel sorry for you, because it's just that feeling that you get in that moment and afterwards and after the game. Like, if you could bottle up that feeling and sell it, you know, it's just something else. But yeah, where does it rank? In terms of just kind of a period of 5 minutes or whatever it was, when Rice scored and then Jesus scored after that, like, that was just bonkers. Probably actually before that, when Garnacho's goal, when he scores and then it gets disallowed, if you kind of, that whole period of, let's say 10 minutes, it was maybe no more than that. That whole period was just, it was just ridiculous. Yeah, it was just absolutely bonkers. So yeah, it's definitely up there. There's obviously been some pretty good moments. Bournemouth was up there. Even United last season was up there as well when Nketiah scored the winner. That was very similar limbs, but yeah, it felt really good. And I think the reason it felt even better was because, like, we were kind of settling for this one. It felt, the team weren't, but it felt like it was gonna end in a draw. It felt like we were gonna have to settle for a point. And I think there would have been massive regrets, and I think really big disappointment to not beat this United team, because I don't rate them at all. I'm really disappointed with them yesterday. And I think from an Arsenal perspective, especially being at home, especially being essentially the better team at the moment, as we have been for the last couple of seasons, I just feel like we would have really just regretted not getting the 3 points yesterday. And so I think it meant even more to get the win so late on, from that perspective. And yeah, it's always just very, very sweet when it's United, isn't it? And just the way it worked out, like I said, that Garnacho, what happened with Garnacho, and then everything that happened after that, the goal to be their goal to be disallowed, and their celebrations were, you know, we saw it, right? We're all absolutely, like, in the mud, despondent, when he goes and scores and he's celebrating on the pitch. You know, he's kind of like doing the whole, yeah, you know, celebrations like, yeah, I'm here, I own the stadium, whatever, like, you know, away ends going mental, and then the VAR thing comes up, and yeah, the whole game swings on that, doesn't it? And the crowd are back and bouncing again and kind of pushing the team. So it was just, it's just, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it's always so special. Feels really special when you win a game like that. And it's, yeah, like I say, it's just always a little bit more special when it's Man United, or, you know, one of your biggest rivals.
It's funny, the effect of VAR as well, isn't it? Because when it was 1-1, like you say, I think we had all sort of resigned to it, and we were all like, okay, that's probably about it. And then Garnacho scores that goal, and we're all fucking flat as fuck. You know, I mean, we're so upset. The introspection starts. You know, you start thinking about where you go from here. But then when it gets ruled offside, the crowd then goes ballistic, right? The crowd just then tears it up. And that wouldn't have happened if it was just 1-1, you know, and that whole thing hadn't have happened. But the fact that it happened lifted everyone. And that, I'm convinced, spurred us massively. What do you reckon, Aaron? And I mean, that because the atmosphere after that point was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I thought generally, like, the crowd were up for it yesterday. I thought the atmosphere for most of the game was really good at the start. I thought the game itself, before the kind of chaos after the 85 minutes, was like pretty average. Like, it wasn't a classic up until the 85th minute, right? Like, nothing much. Yes, there was a penalty being overturned and stuff, but I thought generally the crowd were good. It was a 4 p.m. kickoff. It was, the place was buzzing at the start. North London Forever was loud. The atmosphere was good. I didn't hear a peep from Man United fans. And usually, actually, Man United away support is decent, in my opinion. Like, they do, like, some away support is rubbish, like, regardless. But I thought yesterday the United fans were rubbish all game. Because I just think nowadays the Emirates is, Alan Smith posted a thing on Instagram saying he thinks the Emirates nowadays is probably the best home atmosphere in the Premier League, because it's that good. Like, away support comes to the Emirates now with, like, from the start, we get the crowd up when it's up for it. I think the first two games this season have been a bit like a level below the usual heights of last season, but yesterday felt like a big game. And I do think I think, like, there are some intimidating grounds in the Premier League, but I do think now the Emirates is a place where actually, although our performances don't really look it, like, I think we do a good job of, like, really helping the team over the line. And we've seen it in so many last minute moments last season and this season where it's loud and it's really good. But you're right, the fact that the goal was disallowed, obviously everyone mental with the VAR disallowed it, and then it just came, and then there was this belief, this belief in this team, which is, this team is better than Manchester United. I think no one, like, the result might have been 1-1, it might have been a 2-1 loss would have been an absolute travesty. A 1-1 draw, I think, would have been a really good result for Man United, and I think I would have felt like that's 2 points dropped to a team that is much, much worse than us. And the win, but it was like, this is a team and we believe we can win. And even though the attack hasn't been firing that well this season, like a few misplaced passes, a few player performances that weren't quite at the right level, there was this belief that we can go on and win. And it's just a bit of a, what's the word, like a reinforcing thing. It's like, you do it once, you keep doing it, right? I think actually, like, the team probably the best at European football at this is Real Madrid, right? Like, Bellingham talked about it a few times when they came back to win against Getafe the weekend, where he kind of just said, look, this is Real Madrid, and even if we're 1-0 down, we believe we're going to win. And we've shown in the past that we can just turn it around constantly. And I think at Arsenal now, the players just don't give up. Like, there are certain players that I do think have to be on the pitch. I think Odegaard is so important. Like, when you're chasing a goal, when you've got last minute pressure to try and get a goal, you want Odegaard on that pitch. And actually, like, a player like Reece Nelson, I thought when Reece Nelson comes on, you're like, oh yeah, I believe he's going to do something. So
Zinchenko as well. I find that with Zinchenko is one of those guys you want at the pitch towards the end, don't you?
And to be fair, I think another player who you really want is Declan Rice. I think he is like the player that is just like, sod this, I'm not accepting a draw. He's obviously got that captain mentality at West Ham where he's like, I'm going to drag my team over the line. And although, like, he got the goal and it wasn't like a kind of,
wasn't
like,
a classic.
It wasn't a classic. He was just like, sod this, I'm just going to hit this and just take it. And he goes in and it's just great, man. It's great. I'm just so happy that we did it. And we did it against United. And it's just funny, like, they thought on the 85th minute, it's football, right? Like, they thought on the 85th minute, they're somehow coming away from the Emirates with a 2-1 win. The most undeserving of 2-1 wins of all time. But they probably thought they've just come in, smashed and grab, and they're going to get away with it, right? But now they're leaving with a 3-1 defeat. Sancho fighting bloody Ten Hag. You've seen this stuff with Antony in the news, like getting done for Brazil. Obviously don't know what the allegations are about, so I'm not going to like comment too deeply on that, but just they're a mess. And now they've got 2 weeks of nothing to just think about them being a mess.
And I reckon, honestly,
it's great.
I think we could probably even end the podcast there because you've basically done an 8-minute monologue of, like, every single element of the game. I mean, like, you know, you've even got off the field. I mean, I'm going to try and go right back to some of the stuff I said earlier and let's work our way through. So you talked, there's a point you made about reinforcement. I thought you said, and I wanted to sort of make a point on that actually. So, do you think, and you alluded to it about the atmosphere's not been, you know, perhaps as good as it was last season for, you know, some of for Fulham and Forest games. Do you think that the fans needed to be reminded of how important we could be to the performance of the team? And do you think that, you know, in some ways, that final kind of after the Garnacho situation, that period has just reminded us about that connection and that power that we can have at the Emirates and get our team over the line?
Yeah, I think actually these first 3 games, they were almost a bit too kind in terms of fixtures. And actually, I think we probably saw these 3 games as like almost like an extended preseason a bit. Like, I think personally thought that's 9. It's 3 wins. It's going to be 3 wins out of 3. It's going to be 9 points. And we would just cruise that. And then this United game is going to be the first test. And then the fixtures do get actually quite tricky from now on. And like we had that early kickoff for Forest, which early kickoffs are always a bit rubbish atmosphere-wise. Then Fulham, which should have been good, but obviously we went a goal down early on. And that obviously affects the atmosphere. It's pressure. It's a different kind of game. And I don't know what Palace was like away. You guys went. The atmosphere sounded pretty good on TV there. So this was always the one, right? And this was the one we needed to win. So I'm really excited because I think it just, you know, I think, you know, but you said this, Miles, before the game, like the way the results went on Saturday, it kind of felt that, like, actually, hang on a sec, like this is almost like we're in a title race and it's still it's September. And we're looking at the table thinking, hang on a sec, if we don't win this, we could be, and that's nonsense, to be clear. Like, I think if we had lost, we can still recover and it would have been fine. But it's just the pressure that we're under, like the pressure of competing with Man City, with Haaland, who just is ridiculous. And I think we just needed to have some fun. And I'm really hoping this game is like, okay, take the shackles off, relax a bit. We still got it. We're still a good team. We know what we're doing. Let's just go and play our football and just enjoy where we're at.
Yeah, do you think part of this enjoyment, or do you think any element of this enjoyment that we got yesterday was to do with this return to the formation that we had last season, which kind of seems a little bit more expansive, free-flowing, more overlapping fullbacks and all the rest of it, and Zinchenko in his, you know, in the role that he's been so important for us in, you know, through last season. Do you feel like that had an impact on the performance yesterday?
I don't think Arsenal actually played that well, to be honest. Like, I don't think it was one of our best performances that we've seen kind of under Arteta in this last, you know, 12 months or so, where we've obviously been really, really good. It was actually it felt like wasn't necessarily a tight game. Like, I think there was clearly one team that wanted to win it more than the other one. And I think United came more than happy to take a point. And you could tell that from their tactics. You could tell that from kind of just the intensity of their, you know, passing, you know, the possession stats at the end of the first half. I think you pulled them up, didn't you, Rajan? It was just weird because I didn't expect to see that United had dominated possession, but then it's like, what did they do with the ball? Not very much, apart from the goal they scored. And they obviously came with the same plan as they came to the Emirates with last season, which was, you know, we play a really high line. They'll hopefully, from their point of view, hit us on the counter. And they've got really effective players, especially Rashford, that can cause us problems, and obviously did. But in terms of like us switching to the back four, like just I think I say we all, but majority of Arsenal fans probably have wanted this back four after the first 3 games where Partey at right back and no Zinchenko, it just sort of hasn't really worked, at least from a fan's kind of perspective. I think Arteta may say different. I think he did say different, didn't he? But in the pre-match press conference. But yeah, like I think Gabriel coming back, Gabriel and Zinchenko coming back, I think there's obviously this kind of like element of when you revert back to a system and personnel that you know what you're going to get from them, and that's basically the goalkeeper in the back four that played. They were the first choice for as much, for last season. When you revert back to that, it does give you that kind of like confidence in the team a little bit more, and that like solidity, I guess. I think Declan Rice probably then can play his game a little bit more, where he's sitting in front of that back four, and he knows Zinchenko is going to be kind of beside him a lot more. So he's got like a much more comfortable, let's say a comfortable player in that inverted role. And, I think it just works. Like it just works in terms of the players that we've got. I think the Gabriel one was massive. Like you saw when Højlund came on, like that physical battle between, I didn't realize Højlund was this kind of like quite stocky, big, powerful striker. I really didn't know. I've never seen him play, to be fair. So I thought, I've seen pictures of him and the odd video. I didn't realize that his game was about that, but he gave Gabriel a proper kind of challenge in duels, and Gabriel came out on top, I would say, or held his own for sure. And I think Gabriel is the perfect player in those situations because he's just so physical himself, and he's just obviously massive guy, extremely strong, and he's very good in the duels. And I think for that reason alone, that last, I don't know, 20 minutes or however long Højlund was on for, Gabriel was, there's probably no other defender, maybe Saliba, but on that side, there's no other defender that I would have wanted to have been going up against a player like Højlund. So yeah, I mean, me personally, extremely happy that he's gone back to that back four. He went back to that back four. And obviously I think, it must have added a little bit of, calmness to the team, I guess you could say, where the other players probably can look kind of behind them and say, like, I know what I've got behind me in terms of a defense, and it just gives them a bit more confidence, I think.
Agree with you. And so connecting this to Charles's question, which I've got up on the screen here, where he's saying, does the panel believe that what we've played on Sunday is Arteta ball, or some other version is still to come? The risk of high press, high line is too much for games that have to be tight. United's counters were heartbreaking at times. So like I have a couple of thoughts on this myself. And the first is I always go back to that interview. I really loved that interview. It was a couple of seasons ago. It was Jurgen Klopp, and he was talking about Arsenal played Liverpool. I think Liverpool won 3-1. And I think in the first half, the analysis from Roy Keane, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Roy Keane was basically talking about how he thought, and he thought Liverpool was sloppy. And he basically said, Liverpool was sloppy. They let Arsenal in behind like a couple of times and, whatever. And then Klopp took massive exception to this at the end of the game. And in this post-match, basically he was just like, Roy, you said you're a sloppy. What the hell are you talking about? Basically, you're talking nonsense. And he said, if you want to play at the level that we play, and if you want to sustain that kind of pressure that we play, you have to play a very high line and take very high risk. You have to. There's no other way. And that's why we pay big bucks for an Alisson. And that's why you have a Van Dijk, because we have to play this way to take these risks. I think this is a really good example of that. I think we have to do this. I don't really think there's another way around it. I think if we want to play that kind of suffocating game that we do, then we have to, in some ways, leave ourselves exposed to some extent to a counter. But we need to have good enough players to deal with that, like in kind of individual quality and their own the characteristics of the goalkeeper and the centre backs and stuff. But that does actually lead me to a criticism, which is that the one scenario that you imagine that we would have rehearsed for, right? And we talked about this plenty on the day. The one scenario would have been the counter to Rashford on that left-hand side for him to then cut in and shoot right-footed. That's the like most obvious scenario that's going to happen. And to concede from that, with the defense being the defense, like you touched upon, Mize, the familiarity that we would have had with that back five, with, you know, that back five have played together, you know, I don't know, at least what 30 odd times last season plus, right? Like that back five have played that many. To concede that way against Rashford, for Saliba and White to kind of, you know, do what they did, that was a bit concerning for me. What did you think, Mike? Did you expect a lot more from them in that situation?
Yeah, I have a bit of a thing about, like, I love Ben White. I think every Arsenal fan loves Ben White and absolutely rate him as one of the best defenders in the country. But I do think that he can struggle with players running at him. A player like Rashford that runs at him, I don't know if it's just a kind of like a thing, as in, like, Rashford seems to have something over us. He always seems to score against
even
us.
the last home game, Ben White struggled with Rashford as well. I remember.
Was it
obviously Rashford scored that goal from?
Was it Tomiyasu right back last season? Was it Ben White? I can't remember now.
Was
actually.
it?
Could be wrong.
I think Tomiyasu might have played left back that game. I can't remember.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it was Ben White, because obviously Rashford scored that great goal last season as well.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, oh well, I'm pretty sure it was that game where I was just like, Ben White needs to be. It was like, he doesn't often have bad games, but
this is what I'm saying. Go on.
Yesterday and last season against Rashford, he struggled.
Yeah, and I don't think he does. Like, I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's decisive enough when players are running at him with pace. And it was just weird what Saliba and White did. Like, it was like Saliba was trying to cover one side, Ben White was trying to cover the other, but they both just allowed him to come on in his stronger foot. And I know Rashford's the kind of player that he's quite tricky. He can probably go onto his left and or try and maybe go down his left. But I don't know. It just feels like they backed off until he was in a position where he's in the box 15 yards from goal. And then you know what he's going to do at that point. He's going to try and just get a little bit of space, get it onto his right foot, and then, you know, whip it into the far corner. That's exactly what he does. So, yeah. And I mean, look, I don't know if we're going to talk about Havertz, I guess, but like, it's not a good ball from Havertz. You know, we give possession away terribly. And, you know, Charles touched on it. That's the risk when you play a system like the one that we do, and if everyone's up the pitch and we're all on the halfway line, then of course, like, we're running that risk. So we've got to look after the ball, you know, even more, as it were. We've got to be extremely careful with these kind of like crossfield passes. So I think that's just something that Havertz is probably has now learned the hard way. But yeah, it wasn't good defending at all.
Do you think Ramsdale could have done better? Because that was right in front of us, right? So we obviously sit behind that goal, thankfully, because that's where all the fun is. Do you I think I remember Ramsdale got a touch to it and then it went off the post, did it?
Yeah.
I think he could have done better.
Personally, I don't think so. Like, I've watched it a couple of times afterwards, and I was thinking the same thing initially, but then when I've watched it, it's like he is at full. I think he's at full stretch, and I don't think he's got a touch on it, but I don't think he can do much more than what he's tried to do.
Do you think it's one of those things that if he didn't get a hand to it, we wouldn't have even questioned it?
Probably.
But yeah.
I felt like, I think he saw it a split second late, because actually where we were sat, I don't think I saw the shot. So if I couldn't see the shot, I don't know if Ramsdale could have seen that shot. Because like you said, Saliba and Ben White were just clumsy. I don't know what was going on. I need to watch it again properly to work out like who was supposed to be doing what and who messed up. But either way, like, they just seemed to get in each other's way, confuse each other. And then I think Rashford just pulled off the shot. And I think because he sees it maybe that split second later, he's just, you know, that half a second away. He goes a half a second late and then probably just struggles to get a stronger hand on it. I don't know. Yeah, go on.
No, I was sorry, going for it. I was actually going to move on from that, but have you got any closing thoughts?
No. I don't think so. I think just my initial reaction was that maybe Ramsdale could have done a bit better for that, but maybe I'm just being harsh.
I was going to say as well, I was just going to say, I think now with Raya waiting, in the wings to take his place, we are going to be analysing every single Ramsdale potential error or error so closely. Because we've not had to worry about it for the last 2 seasons. There's not been any competition. So I think, it's going to be really interesting now, because I think last season that goal goes in. I don't really think you question Ramsdale, to be honest. So yeah,
there's a stat that doesn't look that favourable on Ramsdale. I think that's what said, where it's something like the percentage of shots on target this season that he's conceded is pretty high. It's like and you could argue that's partly because we're not conceding very many shots on target, but I think it's like 40% of the shots he's facing, 40% of the shots on target have gone in, basically, something like that.
Yeah, I read another one that said, basically, I think this is the 8th time this season, this calendar year, that we've conceded in the league with the first shot on target against us. No other team has done that so highly. It's like we are developing this pattern, especially when we concede in the first bloody minute all the time. But we seem to be doing okay. Team goes up the other end and they just score. And you do have to put some of the blame, I think, on the goalkeeper in that situation. You can't not, right? Like you include the defenders in that as well, right? The defensive unit has to be concentrating, because the minute they're tested with any real depth, they score. So something isn't right.
Yeah. Because in this situation, it's not even a case where you can say, "Oh, it's because of the high line situation." Because at the end of the day, when Rashford scores, they're already back. So, Saliba and White are in a position to defend it. They're not, down the other end of the pitch. So I agree. Do you think there's a criticism that could be placed on our attacking players for not scoring a goal before the opposition get their shot on target?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is probably going to turn into like the Havertz giveaway was unfortunate, but he obviously before that missed. Well, he didn't miss. He scuffed the shot, and when he was put through, right? And I think, but generally, I thought the attack was pretty bad. I thought Saka wasn't good, Havertz wasn't good, Nketiah wasn't good. Martinelli had some moments.
Was anyone good, mate?
But they weren't good. Like,
there's a stat going around, or there's like a little performance kind of like stat, like a little profile of stats on Saka, and apparently he created 5 chances yesterday. Obviously, I guess one was the Rice goal in the corner.
Yeah,
and like his general performance, statistically wasn't actually too bad. I know what you mean. And the chance he missed was bloody awful. Like, oh my god,
it was really bad.
The keeper. Like, how are you not scoring that?
But I agree with you, Aaron. And like, there's an argument here. Maybe we should get onto this, right? That like, really, I mean, the players that saved us yesterday were the midfield. Like, our midfield really carried the torch for the team yesterday, because, like you correctly pointed out, as an attacking unit, we were like, there isn't anyone that can really like hold their hands up and say that they were really, really good. I mean, Odegaard, like, brilliant finish. Maybe overall we can kind of say, he might have been one of the better ones, but it was like they've got to do better than that, right? And that's kind of been this whole season, right? Like, and so then there's an argument to say that a lot of people are making isn't it brilliant that Arsenal have got 10 points from 12, a possible 12, and they've nowhere near hit any attacking cohesiveness yet. I mean, that's got to be a big plus, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I do. That's probably.
Right, yeah. You go.
Just go on mute. Another 8 minutes.
No, I just
go on, mate.
I was gonna say you're right. Maybe I'll shut up now. But no, I think you're right. I was just gonna say one thing before, because it just came into my head that I really want to say. That Odegaard goal was huge.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think if we go into half time at 1-0 down,
it's
a very, very different game.
I don't think I realized how quickly we scored it afterwards.
I didn't realize.
Really weird, right?
30, 40 seconds or something straight after kickoff. Yeah,
literally straight after, right? Yeah,
that was honestly, because I think if we had gone in 1-0 down at half time, or even like the Fulham vibe would have set in, and it's like they basically played like Fulham did, right? Just with Marcus Rashford. That is Man United at the moment. It's Fulham plus Marcus Rashford. And they came in, they sat deep, they on the ball, they were pretty decent, but we didn't really press them because we were worried about Onana just like playing passes around. Fine, but then we kind of let them have the ball in the like their back four, their back five, whatever, and they didn't really do anything with it, and they just defended deep. And again, like our attackers struggled against that low block. It's just that this time they had Marcus Rashford to go and do something crazy, and then Garnacho towards the end. But apart from that, they did nothing.
And on that, someone who I think is really like, I'm surprised at how irrelevant he was Casemiro. Like he was complete passenger in that midfield. Every time the ball was coming into that zone, whether it's from a goal kick or it's just kind of, second balls or whatever, we were winning it every time. Like we were really like physical. We were really, really smart in getting it. That's Havertz, that's Rice, really. Those two I felt were really getting stuck in. I thought he was a total irrelevance. I mean, this is a 5-time Champions League winner. This is like, a £70 million signing. This is no joke. But yeah, like that, like you say, they're basically they're Fulham with Rashford.
Well, I mean, when we previewed the game, and we were talking about who do we want to start and what kind of lineup do we want. I mean, we talked about reverting to the back four that we got, but I really didn't want to see a double pivot of Partey and Rice. I just felt like our midfield, Rice is obviously the deepest midfielder, and then Ødegaard and whoever the other one was, but yeah, obviously it was Havertz. I was more than comfortable with that up against whoever they were going to bring, and obviously that was going to be Casemiro, Bruno, and Eriksen. I just felt like our midfield is on paper and in actuality in the game, like it's so much better. And I think like the point you just made, Raj, kind of alludes to that really. Really disappointing. Not disappointing, but yeah, I Casemiro is a weird one, isn't it? Because like he had a if you speak to any United fan, there was this conversation about Casemiro being the best DM in the league. Is it him? Is it Partey? Is it Rodri? And I mean, I think there's a clear winner there now, but it's probably either Rodri or Rice now, I would say. Like, probably Rodri, but Casemiro is nowhere near that conversation anymore.
No.
Maybe it's just a player that's just kind of getting to the end of his career.
Oh,
and it's like
100%, man.
Yeah.
I think when United signed Casemiro, I think they paid, it was like £60 million transfer.
Yeah, it's like 60, 70 million quid.
And he's on like 350k a week.
Yeah.
He's 30 when he rocked up. And I'm just like, this is the most like this is the type of thing that we used to do like 3-4 years ago. Is there's this good player who's available now, who's going to be good for 1 or 2 years, and then he's going to hit that age cliff, and he's going to fall off a cliff in terms of performance and ability. And you don't know when that will be. That might be after 6 months in the Premier League, might be after 1 or after 2, but certainly not. He's not going to be able to do it at the top level at 33 at that age. You just can't do that when you transition from like playing in Spain, where you have these 1 or 2 intense games every month in February, March, where you really have to be on it, to playing in the Premier League, where literally twice a week you've got to be on it. And I just think he's hit that age where he's just like, I can't do it anymore. Like, he can't do it. He could go to Spain and probably boss it still. He'd go to France, boss it. He could, but for what United need him to do when he's playing against Ødegaard, Havertz, Rice, they'll just be running around him, playing around him, pressing him. And look, he's still going to have the odd game where he's going to be incredible. And because that's Casemiro, he's like, one of the best players in that role over the last 10 years. Yeah. But just because he was the best over the last 10 years doesn't mean he's going to continue to do that at 31, 32, 33 at 350k a week.
And he had Kroos and Modric in that Madrid team. Yeah. It's like very easy to forget.
Who's he got now? I guess Eriksen,
Bruno,
McTominay, and he didn't play yesterday, but
Bruno.
Yeah.
Mason. Yeah, and it's also one of these things, right? I think we were talking about in the last pod, where it's a real mental transition, I think, when you come from a team like Real Madrid and then you come to Man United, who you think are also like a similarly sized massive club, but they're not like a dominant team in the Premier League. Like, like you alluded to, Aaron, and like every week you've got to be on your absolute A game or you'll lose. It's not like you'll draw, like you'll probably lose if you haven't got your A game, right? And you're going into games like playing against Arsenal, and you're being set up to counter because you can't compete. It's probably not great. Like for him mentally, he's probably thinking, I don't know if I really want to do this. This is pretty shit. Like yeah. Let's talk about our midfielders for a second. Mike's Kai Havertz. So we play him now in on Sunday. We played him in the, let's call it the Xhaka role. Yeah. He hasn't really played that in the first 3 games because we played this different formation, but we played him in this role this time. What did you think of him in the role? What did you think of his performance compared to the 3 games before it?
Yeah, not great, to be honest. Not great. It's just not really happening for him, unfortunately. I think that chance that he gets, like similar to what I said about the Saka one, like I think I expect much, much higher levels from Saka, but you can forgive Saka because if he gets that chance 100 times, he probably scores it more often than not. I think with Havertz, he just that one that he fluffs, he just needs to put that away, and then it probably completely not transforms, but maybe just gives him that confidence. I think he's just so low on confidence, even though Arteta's kind of sticking with him at the moment and he's obviously got faith in him. It feels like he just needs a moment, something like a big assist, a goal, to get the crowd on his side and to kind of, probably feel like, right, I've arrived, and it just hasn't happened yet. And that chance, you've got to take it. Like you've just got to get some sort of contact on it and take it. And I think if he gets any half decent contact on it, he probably goes in. Like I don't think he's very far out from goal. So yeah, and I think that you've just got to kind of compare how Declan Rice has settled into the team and Kai Havertz, and I know that maybe it's a little bit unfair in some ways, but I also think it's kind of fair. Like they're both big money signings. They've both come from Premier League sides. Declan Rice has come from arguably a worse side in West Ham, and they've kind of both been put into the Arsenal team from game one, and they've been told what their role is. And Rice, you would not have thought Declan Rice is a new Arsenal player based on how he started his career with us. He's just settled straight in. He looks like, he just looks like the perfect fit for us in that midfield, in our midfield. And Havertz doesn't. It's literally the opposite. I was pretty disappointed to myself. And like I said before, when things are not going well, like if it's just not happening for you, the last thing you want to be doing is giving the ball away like he did, which basically up until it was 25 minutes in, I think that happened. That first 25 minutes, I can't remember United having a shot, anything. They didn't have a sniff. And it was that one moment they pounced because we know that's what they can do. We know that's what Rashford can do. And like, unfortunately, it's Havertz that's giving the ball away. But I think, in his position where he is now in terms of very, very low on confidence, it's kind of unforgivable. Not unforgivable, but I just feel like that's just such a bad mistake to make. So I personally just feel like, I don't think, and I think when you look at what Vieira is now doing, you look at Vieira coming on the pitch in the last couple of games, and it's just, again, the opposite. It's the opposite. He's like effervescent. He's just lively. He wants the ball. His confidence, it's mental how it changes, right? From last season with Fabio Vieira, we're all asking question marks about where does he fit in the Arsenal team? What's his best position? Is he strong enough? Is he too lightweight? What's he actually good at? There were so many questions about him. And now, for whatever reason, things have completely changed for him. And now the question now for me is, I think it's Everton away next. So maybe Everton away may not be a Fabio Vieira game, as it were. But I think, you've got to start looking at the next few games as like Arteta's. I feel like it does Havertz really warrant his place in the team anymore? I'm not sure he does. I think just based on performances, I think Havertz probably stays in the team because he's a £65 million signing, and I think Arteta will want to kind of prove to everyone that he was the right player, and there's a player there, and he's he's starting him for a reason. But personally, I have faith it will come good in the long run. But right now, and I said this before the United game, I was kind of like, look, it's not really happening. Take him out of the firing line a little bit. Take him out of the limelight, because every bad pass, every kind of mistake, whatever it is, the fans are going to start getting on him. And Arsenal fans do that in the ground and online as well. But even in the ground, there are fans that, he is the scapegoat now. He is going to be the guy that people will go to and be like, if we hadn't have won, if we'd have drawn, against United or lost, if that Garnacho goal does get allowed, he's probably the guy that gets serious pelters. So I feel like, take potentially in the next couple of games, just sort of take him out, bring him on off the bench as an impact sub. And you've got to give the players that are performing, essentially. I'm looking at people like Vieira. You've got to give them minutes now as well. You've got to start looking at that. Just a bit disappointing, man.
Do you think, Miles, that, like Russ's point here is Havertz couldn't even win a penalty? Do you think, in that situation, if Havertz did win that penalty, which, he very nearly did, it's given on the pitch. And, I still do not believe it's a clear and obvious error that should be overturned. Well, certainly if that is a clear and obvious error that should be overturned, then that's not what the Premier League have been doing. But let's just say he wins that penalty. In the same way that Fabio Vieira won the penalty against Fulham, do you think that would have acted like a bit of a catalyst for him, that, that then perhaps his confidence could have gone up?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure that's necessarily enough, because it's not a moment where he's showing his true quality, if you know what I mean. Like, fantastic if you win the penalty, and I personally think it was a penalty and it should have stood. But if you win the penalty, of course, it's going to help. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily the moment that he maybe needs in an Arsenal shirt, or maybe just needs one of those performances where he's the guy dictating the play, he's the guy orchestrating everything. At the moment, it's Ødegaard. So if Havertz can kind of share that responsibility with Ødegaard and have one of those performances where, he might not have the assists and the goals or the stats that kind of back it up, but when you just watch it purely based on eye test, if he puts in one of those kind of 9 out of 10 performances and he shows why he's playing that role, and why he's getting picked, then maybe that's the different, that's what changes things for him. But I don't know. Yeah, like the penalty probably helps, but I'm not sure it's necessarily going to make a huge difference, because it's only going to take one bad pass after that, and or one mistake, and maybe confidence drops again.
Yeah.
What do you guys reckon?
I think that Arteta's got himself in a bit of a situation where, we keep on talking about the off the ball stuff, and I think it's a really fair challenge to say, you can't just say that he's doing really good off the ball things, and that's not good enough for the price you pay. Like, you need more. I totally get that, but I think Arteta's got himself in a bit of a situation where it's probably pretty nice when Arteta watches it and looks at that kind of physical imposition that we have with having someone like Havertz in the middle of the pitch with a Rice or with a Partey, whoever those guys are congregating in the middle of the pitch, because they're just so imposing. And Man United never had a sniff physically. Same when we were at Palace. Palace didn't have a sniff physically. And I think Fulham, Forest, again, similarly, there's so much physicality. I think he'll worry about taking, for example, he takes out Havertz and plays Vieira in that role. It's a completely different equation physically. So I think Arteta will try his very, very, very best to try and kind of eke everything out of this. Or potentially, if it is other players like your Vieiras or whoever's that, who are going to come in, I wonder if, he'll do something else to the system to accommodate Havertz as well. But at the same time, I agree with the general point that it's a long season and we're going to rotate anyway. So Havertz, as a result of rotation, is going to come out. So there's going to be different systems that we will play. But he's clearly, man, I think it's without dispute, he's a man that's lacking confidence.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I don't think we can deny that. Declan Rice, let's just talk to him for a little bit. Because like you said, Mize, it's a really good contrast that you made. Havertz looks new to the team. Rice doesn't. Yeah. Like Rice is just, and I think that the just the leadership, the quality, you name it, everything about him was just magnificent. I mean, and Aaron, do you, in any way, is there anything new that you've learned about Declan Rice that you didn't know already?
No, not really. I thought he was just great. I'm really, it's pretty cool that he kind of got this moment, the big, the Sky game, Super Sunday, 4:00, the big game of the weekend. Everyone's watching, 92nd minute. Most people would have been watching that game if you're interested in football, and then boom, that was his moment, the big signing to win us the big game in the 97th minute or whatever it was. That's what you want. And the shot wasn't anything of beauty. It wasn't anything spectacular, but
It was, mate. I just want to, sorry, not to interrupt you. I watched this back, right? I'm seriously so impressed with how he hits his ball. I know it takes a deflection and maybe like, I think it's on target, but it takes a deflection.
It's going to the far post, right?
But the way, if you watch the slow-mo and the way he hits the ball, obviously he chests it down, he's watching it drop. And I think there's obviously an element of it's the 95th minute, I'm just going to shoot and sort of see what happens. But if you watch the technique he uses to hit the ball and the shape of his foot, and I know this sounds like really like I've like analyzed it like this way too much, but I just noticed it because he kind of like, I don't know how to explain it unless you watch it, but he doesn't just put his foot through it and hope for the best. He really tries. You can just tell by the concentration on his face and then the way he kind of shapes his foot. He's obviously trying to keep the shot down, but I don't know how to explain it. It's just really weird. But if you watch it, you'll probably see what I mean. It's just like this weird, not weird, but this very kind of like, he knows exactly what he wants to do and exactly how he wants to hit the ball. And it's very kind of like calculated in that moment. And I was super impressed with that because
I think it was actually a lot further up than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Like obviously when we're sitting behind that goal, it's hard to judge perspective, right? But like I think actually his actual shot was probably might have been creeping into the far post. We don't know, but
I don't think it was. I think
you not?
I don't think it was when like if you. I mean, it sounds like a stupid thing to say. Yeah, it probably. I mean, yes, it was on target, but obviously there were players in the way.
Go through like 3 or 4 players. Look, man, it went in. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
And his overall play was good. He like I said earlier, he's the type of player you want in your team in these games, right? And I think he's just shown that he is so ready for this level. Like he gets it, he gets a history, he gets I think he does like act up a bit for the interviews and for the camera.
I know what you mean. What you mean. Like
you could tell like he's definitely one to like, he loves the attention and he loves being that guy, and let him do that because
he's clever. He's very clever what he says. Yeah,
on the pitch stuff, right? He knows how to sell himself, right? He always goes on about how he's learned so much about the history. I'd be a bit annoyed if I was a West Ham fan. He's never said, I've learned so much at West Ham. I was there for 15 years, didn't learn anything at West Ham. But in 3 weeks of being at Arsenal, he's learned everything. I was like, no, mate, you're pretty good before you got here as well.
I agree.
But anyway, like he's just like, it's just he's a very, very good player. I just think this was like, the Partey injury just meant that like we needed him to just run that midfield the way Thomas Partey, when he's fit, just does for us. But he adds this extra dimension that Partey doesn't really have in his game, which is kind of just he's a bit more rugged, a bit more, I don't know what it is, but there's something that Partey doesn't have that Declan Rice has. Which you kind of want, like in the 92nd minute, you're chasing a game. Would you rather have, like, because I think going forward, he adds a bit more. He's far more willing to be like, sod this, I'm going to try and win this game myself. Like Partey has tried that from his shots outside the box, and usually he skies it over. But I just feel like if you want a goal from your six, which you don't expect that many of, you'd much rather have Declan Rice in your team than Thomas Partey.
Yeah, I think Rice will probably end up even improving that in his game, and just that'll it's kind of like Rodri. I think he'll become quite Rodri-like in that way. You can see him scoring more and more those sorts of goals.
Exactly.
So totally agree with you. Before we sort of just do a bit of sort of reflection, sort of generally on where we are, how that compares. I want to ask you about Jesus. First, let's just talk about very briefly just what a moment that was. The source about it. It was just phenomenal. I mean, firstly, let's say I know it was Dalot. I actually thought it was Johnny Evans that goes flying, but I think it's Dalot.
But it was Johnny Evans, wasn't it?
No, I think it was Dalot.
Really?
Yeah. It was a bit funny when it felt like it was Johnny Evans, just because you love Johnny Evans so much. So that would have been really funny.
Aaron.
I used to be a big fan of Johnny Evans.
Yeah.
But like I used to be a big fan of like Thierry Henry, but I don't want to start Thierry Henry up front right today.
The thing,
hang on, that is so. You've changed your tune so much.
Yeah, exactly.
It was literally up until like January transfer window of 2023.
January.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Was it
a debate for another day?
And obviously, Man United, in many ways they did play well from a defensive kind of standpoint. They've clearly had a plan and whatever, and but it's pretty banter era stuff to like end the game with Maguire and Evans in the centre of defence. That is like Roy Keane made a good point on the post match. It's just like Johnny Evans is a great guy, but Man United got rid of him 7 years ago because they didn't think he was good enough. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, so how's that work?
Proper banter. Anyway,
it is insane. But anyway, the goal, there was so much sauce in the goal, right? There's so much to love about the goal because firstly, Fabio Vieira's pass is just, he's just continued what he was doing against Fulham of just oozing class. Made a pretty, made a pass that needed to be pinpoint basically. He did exactly what he had to. Jesus has taken it beautifully. There's little details when you watch back at the goal which are really impressive. Reece Nelson is pegging it. He's pegging it so fast. Like he actually ends up pretty level with Jesus if Jesus wanted to square it. It was so impressive how far he ran. But Jesus just, he just sells the keeper and then Onana's got no chance. It just nestles so nicely. It was such a calm finish. And I think we're reminded at that point that Jesus is a genuinely fantastic player. My question to you, do you think that puts Jesus back, that even that moment puts Jesus back as the number one striker? And if everyone is fit going into the Everton game at the end of the, after the international break, do you think he starts?
That's me, mate.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah.
I think he's the undoubted number one striker or forward that we play through the middle. For me, like, I think just to go back on one thing you guys said earlier about the forwards, just because we're talking about Jesus, like I think you guys were a little bit harsh on all of our forwards, really. When I can't remember if it was Aaron or Raju. I can't remember which one of you said it, but
both solidarity.
Fair enough. Like I feel like they didn't have their best of games. Agreed, but like, and I think I said it to you guys during the game when Martinelli coming up against, like, basically, I really rate Wan-Bissaka. I think a lot of people rate Wan-Bissaka, regardless of how bad Man United are. And 1v1, he's probably the best in the league, or one of the best. Maybe Kyle Walker's up there in terms of fullbacks and being able to deal with like a tricky, pacey winger. And every time Martinelli was trying something, and he was trying everything, Wan-Bissaka seemed to get the better of him. And I don't think that's the only time that you've seen that from Wan-Bissaka against a decent winger or a good winger. So, like, I don't necessarily think Martinelli had a bad game. I think he just came up against someone who was defending really, really well, like he normally does, especially in those 1v1s. And I think Eddie had a pretty good game as well. Like, I know that, he didn't score or anything. Yeah, fine. But at the same time, I think we're starting to see something a little bit different from Eddie. Just in terms of, like, we've said it before the last couple of seasons, like, Eddie doesn't offer you anything apart from goals, and he tends to be in the right place at the right time, and he'll be there for the chance. Doesn't always take the chance, but his positioning and his movement's really good, and his finishing is pretty good. But I feel like he seems to have, like, got a lot bigger. I don't know if it's over the summer or if it's happened recently, but he seems to just be a lot stronger, more physical, and I feel like he's started to add that to his game a bit more, where in terms of like duels and holding off defenders, holding up the ball, and kind of like just being involved a bit more in the kind of the build-up play, the all-round play, like he's becoming a bit more useful in those scenarios. So I don't think he had a bad game as such. But look, coming back to Jesus, for me, he's a much better player than Eddie. That 20 minutes or so that he came on, you just see like kind of everything that he's about. And I think this is the great thing about having such a kind of deep squad now, or just options in these positions, because you can, like you said, Raj, throw on a player like Jesus with that, at the end of the game and start running at tired defenders, and like the trick started to come out and he was doing the step overs and everything. And he just was getting on the ball and he was taking players on. And it was just, it was really, really good to see. Like the goal was beautiful, because there was that moment when he's obviously through on goal, like Vieira's played him in, he's through on goal, and then Dalot comes sliding across and obviously just sells Dalot completely. And then the stadium it's just silence. The stadium just goes completely silent, waiting for, is he going to finish it or not? Is he going to cock this up? And obviously he finishes it and the stadium just erupts again. I think everyone was still kind of like recovering from what had just happened with Rice like a few minutes before. So it was just like double the amount of kind of craziness.
Yeah, I completely fell for that dummy, by the way.
Yeah, so, me too.
When he did it, I thought he shot and I thought Dalot had blocked it. So I was like,
wow, really?
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, wait, he's still got the ball.
So good.
It's like, I went with it and I was like, because, and then, and then I couldn't believe he still had the ball. And then that moment when I was like, oh my God, he's still got the ball. Oh, man, it was incredible.
He just slots it, doesn't he? There's so many times, but I mean, to be fair, it's a pretty simple finish because Onana's like, there's so much of the goal for him to aim at, but you see it when he's about to shoot, you're thinking, oh my God, like imagine he puts this wide, he hits the post or something. But he just slots it away beautifully. And go on, mate. Sorry.
I was going to say a couple of random things. Actually, just finish what you're going to say because this is slightly off piece.
I mean, it was just just in terms of Jesus, like I think we are a better team with him in our team, and I think we'll start if Jesus stays fit and if he starts starting games or Arteta starts playing him from the start in the next few games after the international break. I think you'll start to see Saka and Martinelli, become even more effective. I think he offers so much more in our attack than Eddie does, despite what I just said about Eddie and praising him. I think Jesus is a level above. So I think simple terms, put it as simple as possible. I think Jesus starts going forward.
I think it will be good to see Havertz play with him.
Yeah,
I want to see. Look, Havertz. We can't have a situation where the only situation where Havertz is going to be good is if we have our best 11, right? So that's not a thing. But when you have a player that's like low on confidence, you kind of just want the ideal circumstances for him to like thrive. And I think the way Arteta has obviously looked at this is like, I want my first 11, especially in that area of the pitch, is Gabriel Jesus, Martinelli, Zinchenko, and then this left 8 who has to play with those 3. If we get to the Champions League final, those 3 are going to be playing. Who is going to be in that left 8 and what do I need? And Arteta, for all his knowledge, has gone Kai Havertz, spent £60 million on it. So there's obviously something that he is trying to achieve. And a lot of that depends on these links. And that's what I'm really curious to see is like, when you have that, does it unlock something in Kai Havertz?
Yeah, it's a good point. That will be really interesting. The two random things I wanted to say was one, my to your Wan-Bissaka point. It was quite interesting because I saw this thread on Twitter, which was basically saying that a lot of fullbacks are taught specifically not to slide in because the chance of conceding a corner is proportionately a risk not worth taking versus staying on your feet and pushing and keeping the player out from kind of getting across in at all. So effectively kind of ushering them back, to avoid them crossing the ball. And since Wan-Bissaka has joined Man United, no player has conceded more corners than Wan-Bissaka. So the argument that was being made was basically just like, it is brilliant. Like, he's obviously a really good tackler, but as a result of his strategy, they concede lots of corners. Okay. And, they're and you could argue, or what you could say is like, yeah, but if he's not making those tackles, who's to say that actually they don't beat him and go and cross it and score? So that's completely fair. But it's quite an interesting, like, hypothetical question as to actually, would more defenders do what he's doing, and have they just had that trained out of them? Who knows? But I agree, like, there's lots of players. I think James Maddison said it a while ago as well, didn't he? He said, like, Wan-Bissaka is the best kind of one-on-one defender he's ever seen. The other random thing, which I think is really funny, is like, so obviously, like, Onana is very key, right, to like Man United's strategy now, right, as a kind of beating the press or whatever. I thought it was really funny because obviously African nations is this year, and he had retired from international football like a while ago, but he's now just come out of retirement. Like,
Yeah.
so
Really?
yeah, he's
What,
like,
Cameroon?
just
to play in AFCON?
yeah, so he's playing in their qualifiers now, but he's come out of retirement. So like, I wonder if Man United, if that had anything, like maybe it wouldn't have changed their mind, but to lose your goalkeeper to African nations is quite a big deal, right? It's not like, say, for example, a Ramsdale Raya situation. They've gone and just signed a fairly like random keeper from Turkey, I want to say, to play as their like number 2. And so, that's January is a tough time, right? It's I thought that was
They brought
Cameroon.
yeah,
think
he's
so,
Cameroon.
Cameroon, yeah.
They brought Johnny Evans back, so maybe they'll bring like fucking, I don't know,
Van der Sar.
Ed De Hoy or something like Fabio Bartos.
Let's reflect a little bit now, just to end the show on what this all means for Arsenal. So if you look at the league table, Man City have played 4 and won 4. And then there are 4 teams who have played 4, won 3, and drawn 1. Those are Tottenham, Liverpool, West Ham, and Arsenal. So kind of points-wise, Arsenal are sort of joint second. Yeah, and only Man City have done better. How do you feel about that? And what do you think about sort of some of the teams above us right now? Let's just start by saying that, how do you feel about Arsenal having 10 points from 4 games? Do you want to go to you? Go on.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Look, I'm at that stage now with Arsenal where I kind of, except when we play Man City home and away, I kind of expect us to win, because I do firmly believe we are the second best team in this league. At least.
Did you say when we play Man City home and away, you expect us to win?
No, I don't expect us
Oh,
to
you
win.
don't? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, except for those 2 games.
Okay.
I expect us to win every other game. Because ultimately, I think any of those teams are not as good as we are, right? And therefore, like, the reality is, when you are competing with City, you can't drop points. You just can't drop that many points. So look, I think 10 out of 12 is probably the minimum I would have expected. I would have expected 4 out of 4, honestly. But you got to be realistic. This is football. We're not going to be as good as we were last season for the first half of last season, where we were ridiculously good like the first half of last season. We're just not going to be that good. So we are going to drop some silly points. So look, it's too early to tell, like, are we truly playing in like the second best team in the league, or are we playing like just a very, very good team? But no, I think it's good. I think, like you said earlier on, Raj, the fact that our attack isn't really clicking, it's not working, but still, actually, we're creating chances, we're dominating games. Teams are having to defend deep against us. That's all very, very encouraging. I think what I get excited about with this Havertz thing is, like, just imagine how good we're going to be if we can get Kai Havertz playing at the same level as Martin Odegaard or Martinelli. Like, my God, it's going to be incredible. Because actually, in that number 8, we've always had just a bit of like in Xhaka, we've always had a guy who just keep things going, right? Yes, Xhaka was good and he got a few goals now and then towards the end of the season, but actually he was a guy that just kept everything ticking along. If we could have a match winner in that position to add to Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Jesus, like, that could be ridiculous. And that is what he is the key. I think if Havertz clicks, we win the league.
Well, oh my God, you heard it here first.
No, I think we win the league.
You heard it here first.
I'll put it this way: I don't think we will win the league unless Havertz clicks.
You already predicted us to win the league anyway, right? So I guess you're kind of.
So I'm backing Arteta to get it right with him. Yeah. But I cannot see how we win the league.
I think if he doesn't click, he probably comes out of the team, right? Like, I know we talked about him, but I get where you're coming from.
Unless Vieira just goes to that.
That's level. What I'm saying. Like, if Vieira
again, that's maybe he can, right?
Yeah, maybe,
but like
maybe.
The thing is, go on. I'm pretty happy. It's like it's a 4 out of 5.
Mine's like, are any of the other teams surprising? Let's talk about Liverpool for a second. So Charles saying, opposition take any thoughts on Liverpool finding their mojo back silently in the race? Yeah, I mean, look, like Liverpool were allegedly having an absolute torrid time trying to rebuild their midfield. They have had heavy criticism as to how they've navigated the window, but they've ended up with Dominic Szoboszlai, who is like looking pretty good. They've just had Gravenberch, who wasn't involved the other day, but he obviously will be. Alexis McAllister is there, and Endo. So whatever the case might, they have racked up 3 wins in a row. That really impressive win against Newcastle, and have absolutely battered Aston Villa, who are a team who are supposed to be quite tricky. It's quite funny actually. Like, so one of the guys at work is a season ticket holder at Liverpool, and he was at the game, and he was basically saying that last season, when they played Villa, it was really tough. It was like Villa were tough, like really, really hard. Because like they were absolutely, he just thought they're absolutely pathetic, and he couldn't quite figure out whether it was because Liverpool were good or not. So, anyways, sort of focusing back on Liverpool and not necessarily Villa right now. Have you been surprised with them? Do you think that they could sustain this? Do you think that they'll kind of be up there?
Not surprised with them. I think when we did our season preview, I was kind of backing them to be definitely in the top 4, and I know that at that point they hadn't signed probably a couple of the midfielders that they have since, but I was kind of looking at their forward line and just the firepower that they've got. I thought this is the season that Núñez really does kind of like explode, and he didn't start the first few games, and obviously came off the bench against Newcastle. We know what happened, and got a couple of assists at the weekend as well. So yeah, like I'm not surprised, to be honest. I'm not surprised that they've had a good start to the season. They've got great players across the pitch, from front to back, and it's like last season was a very bad season for them, but it was one season out of 5, 6, whatever it's been, where most of those other seasons they've been either in the top 4 or they've been trying to win the league and pushing City very, very hard. So I know there's been like you say, Raj, a bit of a rebuild, but no, not surprised at all. And I think I still back them to finish top 4. I think the fact that they kept Salah is massive. Who knows what happens in January, but I guess their intention is probably keep him for another season and hope the money comes in from again next summer, and they get like proper money from Saudi Arabia for him. But if let's assume they keep Salah for the whole season, they're just going to score so many goals. Like I can see them just winning games like 3-0, 3-1, 4-1, like scoring a lot of goals. Don't really rate their defense. I think, yeah, they've got a few problems there in terms of this Trent thing. Just seems to be a problem where he's just not the best defensively, and he does make mistakes. And I think Van Dijk genuinely is like past it, probably because of his injury. Like still a good defender and everything, but just not at the level he was a couple of years ago. So I think there's still some like questions there, but yeah, overall, I'm not surprised really. I don't competing for the title. I don't like. This is the thing. Like we were talking about how Arsenal have started this season and the 10 points out of 12, and City have obviously got maximum points. And what does that mean? City generally don't start the league that super strongly where they're getting maximum points. They obviously come good in the second half of the season. They come good when it really matters. So they did to us, what they did to us last season. They stayed close to us. They were just like not clinging on. That's not right. But they were basically in touching distance of us the entire season. And then when it came down to it, they did what they needed to do. They were the most consistent team in the last 10, 15 games, whatever. So if Arsenal can do that, if Liverpool, for example, can do that, then you just put yourself in a position where come March, April, if you're there, then it's like, okay, now what do the fixtures look like? And can we put a run together? Can we win 9 out of 10 games, whatever it is? So potentially, it's still big question marks, right? Like they've got a brand new, like literally a brand new midfield. The entire midfield is just completely changed. Sorry. So who knows how that's going to work for them? But yeah, I think top 4. I think top 4 for them.
Top 4. Okay. And Aaron and Tottenham. as Russ says, and seems to be working wonders with Spurs so far. I mean, very quickly, what do you think about Tottenham and how they look?
I think they look okay. I think actually he's taken over in quite favourable circumstances. Because Tottenham were awful last season, I thought. Kane, they lost Kane, so it's almost like he's got a bit of a get out of jail free card where no one's really expecting Tottenham to be good this year. Whereas, like over the plus 4 years, it was always like, okay, how can we get back to being a top 4 team, or how can we try and go and be like a good Champions League team? And yeah, they look like they are enjoying their football at the moment. And he's got Son like actually scoring again. I thought Son was finished as a footballer, but he's got him. If he can get Son scoring with Maddison, they could cause a few problems. I don't think defensively they are fully up to scratch. I thought actually, like when they played United could have probably beaten them, but they just didn't because they didn't take their chances. And I don't think they'll be as clinical now with Kane in these big games. I think Burnley were awful, like really, really bad, and kind of just played into their hands. So, look, I can see why Spurs fans would be excited. I'm not worried about them yet. I don't think they've got enough, especially like depth-wise, to really challenge us, Liverpool. But after those 3 teams, I think actually, you would have thought 4th would have been out of reach, but they could nick 4th,
Yeah, I think top 5 certainly is realistic because they've only got those 2 competitions and they've kind of got that feel good factor going about them. And just done quite a good job in getting that. And yeah, I think the fixtures will really, really help.
There's no pressure. They could finish 7th and no one will care.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess also West Ham are up there, and you probably have to say they'll probably avoid relegation. Probably, yeah, I think so. Good start. And
they look good, man.
And,
they do. I mean, like
yeah.
they've got. You look at some of their players. They've actually got some like very, very good players.
They've spent the Rice money pretty well.
Yeah,
they have in the end, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because it really didn't look like that was going very well, and they've done a fantastic job.
They bought players.
Kudus. Who else are they getting?
Alvarez.
Yeah. Alvarez.
And I'm sure we're forgetting someone, but yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, I definitely don't think they're going to be in a relegation battle. It'll be interesting to see how. It'll be really interesting to see how they do though, because it's one of these things. The league's so bloody competitive, isn't it? Because like teams we haven't talked about yet, like we're not going to cover it all now, but like teams like Brighton, like Villa and Brentford even to some extent, Man United, 11th at the moment, Chelsea at 12th, Newcastle at 14th. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's mental, isn't it? So it's way too early to go on.
Can I ask you a quick question? What about the opposite? Is there any team that's looked significantly worse than you thought they would look?
I think the interesting thing is I don't think Newcastle have looked bad necessarily, but they have lost 3 games in a row. Like that's pretty crap. Like to I don't know how many games in the end we lost altogether. But losing 3 games in your first 4 is not like good. I don't see Stuart Pearce has still predicted that he thinks Newcastle will win the league.
Is he?
Which I thought, yeah. Just like, yeah, mad.
Wow.
But so Newcastle surprised me. That's a lot of defeats.
The games they lost, like, if those games are spread out across the season, City, Liverpool, Brighton, they're not the worst losses. I think they've had a bit of a crap start to the season in terms of fixtures. But yeah, I take your point. Probably expectations were a bit high for Newcastle. Chelsea have to be up there. I mean, I don't care like how bad Chelsea were last season. Like they've been pretty bad. I think they've only won 1 game. Is that Luton that they beat?
Yeah. They have been poor.
I thought
Everton would be a little bit better than this.
No. predicted
They got
them
one
to
point.
be
They got
awful.
1 point.
That's exactly where I thought they'd
Yeah.
like. Yeah, like,
Really?
oh mate, like
I
they
think-
still haven't sorted out their strike. Well, I think they bought someone now, but like I think again when we did the preview, they bought like Danjuma on loan and someone else. I can't remember who it was. And Ashley Young. It's like that is not going to be enough. So yeah, I don't see. I think Everton are going to struggle again this season. We have them next, don't we?
We do have him next. Yeah, our record there's is patchy though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very, very quickly because this has gone on longer than I anticipated. But Charles has just asked for thoughts on the CL draw. He's saying a very Europa League draw. Some say will Mikel Arteta take it seriously? European games against lower tier opposition seem not to light the fire. If Europa performance taught us anything, very, very quickly, try and be incredibly succinct, lads. What do you guys think, Mice?
Yeah, I have so he'll definitely will be up for it. I mean, it's first Champions League campaign in 6 or 7 years. So and like every single fan has been waiting for this, so we'll be up for it. And the Emirates, I think, is going to play a big part in those home games, like Aaron was saying before, the atmosphere. I have a similar kind of feeling about the draw, and I think Raju said the same. Where I would have probably preferred a big team from the first pot, from pot 8, like just because I think that would have meant we'd have to raise our levels to compete in those two ties. And I just hope that, the fact that we've got a group now that we should probably top on paper. And I don't know if that brings about more pressure than it would have if we'd had a big team and all it would have been about was just getting out of the group, whether that's first or second, just get out of the group and qualify. Now I feel like there's pressure on us to win it. And it's going to be interesting to see how we deal with that. But yeah, we'll be up for it completely. Yeah.
Aaron?
Yeah,
anything to
I'm pretty happy with that draw. I think that's what we need. We don't need the distraction of 2 games against Bayern or PSG in November or whatever. It's like, I don't know, man. The big games, they'll come. They will come in February and in March and April because we'll be there, hopefully. I think like the great thing is like this is one of those groups where if we don't mess about by match day 4, we could be qualified and hopefully could have won the group if like the circumstances work out. That's why kind of UEFA want to change it, because there's actually a lot of dead games in the group stages nowadays. So we should make this boring as hell. Like just win the first 3 or 4 games, and then match day 5 and 6, do whatever you want. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Agreed. Well, look, international break now, and we've got some time until our next fixture, so there's no point in us properly previewing it. We may or may not record before Everton, but in the meantime, everyone, look, really enjoy the gap between fixtures, because that just means you get to savor the Man United game for even longer, and what a game. I'm still loving it. I might even after this just watch the final 5 minutes again. I mean,
I'm just going to watch that
phenomenal.
Jesus dummy again.
That's so good.
Again and again and again.
Good. So good. Brilliant. Listen, everyone, thank you for joining us. Charles, Russ, thank you as always. Jana, thank you for dropping in. Shani, thank you. Aravind, thank you. And good to meet you, Aravind, at the game as well. Awesome. Everyone, Mize, Aaron, thanks for joining.
Thanks,
Cheers,
boys.
mate.
Have a nice night.
Goodbye.
All right,
Catch
guys.
you later.
Bye.
Bye.